Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another webinar with Receivables Info. How's everybody doing today? Today, I'm here with Ian Winder with Latitude by Genesys. How you doing today, Ian? Oh, looks like I lost your audio. Can you hear me? Oh, well, a little technical difficulties is always fun. Let's see if we can. I still don't have audio on your side. So, of course, right when we tested it, before we jumped on, all was good in the world. So just one moment that I have audio difficulties here. Yeah, I've got audio on my side. So sorry, everybody. We'll just take a minute here as we try and resolve this. Ian, you want to try talking, see if we can hear you? Nope. Well, I guess Demio has just failed us today. From an audio standpoint, Ian, do you have your microphone on? I can't hear you. Well, everybody, we're going to try and resolve here. Yeah, Ian, it's got to be on the mic on your side. Can anybody hear Ian, or is it an Adam problem? That's all right. Well, again, we apologize for a little bit of audio issue here. Can hear on my side, can only hear Adam. All right. Well, I think as we kind of kick this off and as Ian's kind of working through the technical issue there, I think one of the things that we can start doing is talking a little bit about the predictions of the industry and kind of where we're expecting things to go over the next year or so. So Latitude's been working on a lot of different products and services to enhance what they're doing today and to prepare for that open marketplace. I think all of us are seeing these changes that are coming down from an industry standpoint. I think we're seeing volume changes, collectability changes, and a lot of that starts to require us to update our technology systems tools in order to execute on some of the opportunities, right? We always find this balance between the volume of accounts and the collectability of any individual account. And so I think as we've looked at that, it's a lot of organizations have been trying to, let's call it, improve the rails, so to speak, right? They're trying to improve their ability to move volumes of accounts throughout their workflows, knowing that they're going to have more accounts to work to reach the same revenue goals in the future, or at least that is the expectation across the industry at this point. So I think that lies some interesting challenges that I think Latitude has done some things to address from an industry standpoint. How's the audio going in? Nothing. I think we lost you. If you want to try jumping off and jumping back in, we can try that. I'm going to move you over to a larger screen so I can try and help troubleshoot as we go here. Um, Otherwise, we'll reschedule this for another time because I think we've got a lot of great information to share today and just some technical difficulties on the Demio side. Because we were literally sitting here chatting before the session started. So I guess we'll take this as an ask the audience moment and say, do we does everybody want to stick around for a minute? Well, give Ian an opportunity to try and reconnect here, because I know we've got a lot of good information to cover here today.
Okay,
there we go.
Seems like
now.
If I reset it, I have to leave the room and come back again. So here we are. Hopefully it stays.
So hey, look, everything works out in the end, right?
Yep.
So, we've been talking about, kind of the change in the industry in terms of the volume of accounts. And one of the things that drives that change is the digital communications being on the rise. Ian, from your perspective, I know that's something that's been a major focal point for Latitude as an organization as you've been looking at your roadmaps. How are you integrating into that digital communications world?
So the way we've kind of approached this is, obviously Genesys is a contact center company, but we are still an open platform. And just as we do with other integrations, we've built the framework more around pluggable, so it gives the customers the choice as to who to use and how to use that functionality. But enabling it within Latitude is kind of what we've done. Both from on-demand type digital communications, bi-directional conversational digital communications, so you maintain that conversation as it progresses with the customer or the debtor, but also the ability to handle campaigning type digital communications as well. One of the challenges there, as anybody will face, and what we've looked to solve is, it's all good and well to mass request, but I don't want those going out at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So it's the ability to schedule when you want that digital communications to occur, not based upon your time, but based upon the end users time zone. So there's a lot of back end manipulation of dates and times to ensure we stay within a compliance model for digital communications. But again, it's an open architecture is what we've built. So just the ability to leverage that within the Latitude product suite.
Well, it sounds like similar to what you guys have done with the AI machine learning tool sets is you've basically enabled the customers to apply the technology, meaning that you didn't go down the path of trying to become an AI company. Right. You made that information and data available to those AI vendors by which each customer can kind of decide the angle in which they want to approach that new challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the major tenets for us is kind of an open platform. We want to have, our solution is we're a collections platform. We're not an AI AI company. We're not modeling, scoring, but we want to enable you to leverage those technologies that are out there and available and critical to the business as it's evolving. But give you the openness to leverage those through our open APIs, the ability to get and update data, and then take that data that's now come back or come in from an external source and leverage that in your workflows and your business processes. So we don't profess to be that, but we want to enable you to be able to use that technology and that capability within Latitude. We're extensible. Add data as needed, add fields as needed, but also the openness of the platform, I think, is critical to us. We want to make it the best solution, but it's enabling, right? So.
Well, down that vein of enabling, right? There's kind of two angles here. One is that you're enabling the connectivity to anybody, so anybody can come in and code that connectivity. But at the same time, you're also have some pre-built integrations that are ready to rock and roll tomorrow, right? So you've got some sets where you can minimize the workload required by which to actually get a new tool set off the ground.
Sure. Again, we're, as I said, we want to be the collections excellence, not the other providers, right? So we have a great ecosystem of partners that we have out there that's continually evolving. We're adding as we see the need for customers are asking, and we're open to doing that, be it traditional batch type processing or more real time. Which is becoming more the flavor of the day, right? Everybody wants everything real time. regardless of what that may be. But yeah, again, we are an open environment. We like to enable people to do what they want and leverage who they think are the best providers in the industry.
I think it's an interesting way to approach it, right? It's you're the warehouse for everybody's data, and when you're the warehouse for that data, enabling the interconnectivity of third-party vendors so that they can continue to build on it without having to rely on a single application, which I think is a very appropriate way to approach this industry where things evolve in this business so rapidly, right? The ability to tie these things together, I think, is really essential towards the long-term success of organizations in the space.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as I say, that's our major tenet is we want to be a piece of your business, the contact center, the CRM piece of it, the collections platform, but we know that we're not everything, right? And you're going to leverage, centers of excellence of what you want to bring in. We want to allow you to do that. Others, yes, no, but our tenant is yes. We want to enable everybody to do what they need to do to manage the business.
Well, that interconnectivity, right, was always an even bigger challenge when we were dealing with the on-premise environments because it wasn't just the challenges of interconnecting Latitude to something; it was interconnecting your network to something else, right? And so I know you guys have gone through a big push to the cloud. Can you talk a little bit about what that movement to the cloud has been like for you and your customers?
Yes, to some degree. I mean, we looked at that, the cloud shift. There's always been kind of a bit of a mental challenge about, do I want everything brick and mortar? Do I want it in the cloud? What my customers support? What will they allow to have happen, and so on. So what we did is when we looked at Latitude as a cloud-based solution, is let's make it an identical platform, whether it's brick and mortar or whether it's cloud. We're not locking out things. It's not a different solution. So the transition to the cloud for our customers is really very straightforward. There's no change in the business structure, no change in capabilities. It's really just a lift and shift of the data from where it resides today into the cloud environment. We're not necessarily leveraging some of the cloud capabilities infrastructure simply because we don't want to make the product dependent on a cloud deployment. It has to be available in either model, right? But we can't limit the features and functionality based upon that, which means in a cloud model, you still have to have all of that connectivity. You still have to exchange data. You still have to integrate. And so, the way we set up is structured such that that can happen. We've had, several customers who've shifted from a prem-based model and want to go to the cloud, and that's really just like I say, it's just a lift and shift and a slight, connection reconfiguration on their side as to how they're going to connect to the solution. But yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, I feel like this has been a hot topic across the industry, right? And you're not having to host all of these individual applications. So there was a time where you would have to have each one of these applications like hosted within your internal environment and then manage the interconnectivity between those physical devices. Now you've got a couple different cloud services with these API connections, which is simplifying the ability to move data back and forth between applications. And that's really all that APIs are doing is helping to move that data back and forth, but doing that consistently, frequently, and and accurately. I think most importantly,
Right.
becomes a major factor.
Oh yeah. So again, we've had some good experiences, moving to the cloud. We've had actually a couple of customers who decided to go back to a prem model. Works either way, right? But again, just the architecture that we use, the way we leverage that across prem or cloud-based model, it gives you that full functionality, and to your point, the ability to access and interchange data readily and rapidly. So
Yeah, I always found it easier to do that outside of an on-premise deployment because now I've got 25 additional steps I'm going to have to take in that on-premise deployment versus potentially just a drag and click in order integrate two different cloud services that have a pre-integration developed. So I think that's just an interesting observation in the evolution of technology across the space. But I think you're going to see more organizations moving to the cloud here as well. And I know we've had a couple conversations about that, but I just continue to see that as the wave of the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think, mindset has shifted. It used to be, it's just hosted in somebody else's environment. But yes, there's a tremendous benefit to that from an organizational standpoint, right? And as long as the cloud environment meets all of the standards and compliance components that you need, to maintain that integrity that you would have in a prem-based model. So that's been when we establish cloud or we work with cloud partners. That's one of the requirements there.
That environment itself meets the. That makes sense.
Yep.
So one of the other things that we've seen kind of from a evolving industry standpoint has been kind of this shift on the observations of medical debt in general, right? And it feels like medical debt seems to be one of those real hot button issues, both from a regulatory standpoint, I think in terms of the rulemaking that has just come out. But talk to me a little bit about how you guys are starting to evolve your platform to meet the needs of some, let's call it adjunct markets, right? Like markets that are not just hardcore collections and receivables, but there are a couple of different areas where you're almost moving into that origination side of the world and helping those creditors to manage that. What's that process look like for you guys?
For us, I mean, foundationally, Latitude as a collections platform, has historically focused on basic cash collections, charged off debt, right? But we've modeled Latitude now more around, can I support delinquencies in a more efficient manner versus just charge off, and understanding the relationship between Latitude and servicing platforms, right?
Mhm.
Where Latitude is not necessarily a system of record, but is just managing the account during that collections process. So
Mhm.
we manage through that from a technology framework standpoint. But again, it's the flexibility. I mean, we want to allow you to configure Latitude to meet the business. So
Mhm.
uh, you have data that's relevant in the collection cycle that isn't necessarily part of traditional debt collections, that we allow you to customize the screen, present to the agent what's relevant for this account as they're
Mhm.
working that account. So platform wise, we've tried to become far more flexible in how do you want to not only ingest and use data, but how do you want to leverage that as far as the agent, what they need to see to understand the account.
Mhm.
So that goes again a lot towards enablement. If the data is there, what do you want to see? How do you want to see it presented on the screen? What's relevant to the agent to minimize clicking, going to different screens? Let's put it up on the screen where they need to see it when they first get to that account.
Well, pattern recognition from a user interface standpoint is a hallmark of great design. It's interesting to see how you guys have started to break some of that stuff down onto the screen. I'm curious to see how different users might approach the same problem, right? Because I'm assuming most of them don't have interface designers or pattern recognition technology to like work through that process. So they're kind of going through it manually and moving things around based on like how they see the world.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to box it and frame it. It's idea here for us is to enable the business user to do what they need to do without having to leverage outside resources from a technology standpoint, internal resources for building. It's all based upon a business user designing and specifying what they want and how they want it.
So, I mean, from a medical standpoint, I think and this is going to happen across the board. I kind of kicked it off talking a little bit about, let's call it the margin crunch across the industry and that balance of the collectible versus the volume of accounts, right?
Right.
And so I think as we start, moving more down the path of 2020, really going into 2024, we're going to, I don't even know what year it is anymore. We're going to start to see a little bit of we're going to see a massive change. I mean, I think it was in October when it was the all-time highest delinquency for auto loans was reported. And just looking at the crest of the wave that's starting to form behind us, what is that going to look like when it crashes and we need to run 5, 10, 20 times the account volume over the same rails? I mean, it feels like you guys have started preparing for that volume shift, but like, is the industry really ready to address those issues?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's going to be I think it's going to be a huge challenge, right? Because when you look at, historically, how do I effectively manage the inflow of accounts? How do I get efficiencies? How do I leverage the technology? Um, think back to when I first started many years ago, the three P's, right? What's most expensive? People, phones, and postage. But now we've shifted model, right? And so the solutions that you look at from a business perspective have to be able to support that volume. How do I leverage, traditional collections processes versus digital strategies versus how do I pull in AI? How do I manage my workflows? How do I identify the accounts and how do I prioritize those from a collections standpoint? Again, volume is going to drive a lot of changes, I think, in strategies, because you can't manage the volumes in the traditional manner, right? You have to leverage the technology to be able to do that function.
But you also have to be able to consolidate those communications, understand across all of these different channels what's happening, and continue to meet the 7 and 7 requirements. Well, I think it's interesting to see how that all starts to come together quite quickly.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting challenge, and we look at it we look at the 7 and 7, right? But again, that's focused more on traditional channels and not so much digital. And there was no real framework around, what does it look like? Well, just don't don't be abusive. So we're going to see more and more, and certain states have imposed limitations around digital channels as well. But outside of just the compliance aspect, to your point, is how do I tie all of those channels together? How do I make a seamless integration? I'm going from a voice to an email to an SMS message, and how do I bring that together so the agent, when they're looking at accounts or people looking at accounts, can understand that whole conversation flow that's taken place, in that collection cycle. So.
And it's interesting, and I think as we look at this increase of volumes and working across those digital channels, it seems like we're going to be moving more towards the consolidation of functionality on our platforms. And one example I'll give is like single sign-ons, right? Like I'm actually doing that project right now internally and trying to balance out all of the 25 different pieces of technology that we're using, and then how do you start to manage that granular level of access on a more finite level? Is that something you guys have had to experiment or learn with yet?
Yes, we did. We looked at it because we knew that's the direction that organizations are going on. Single sign-on, it simplifies everything from an end user perspective. It enables better management from a business perspective. Traditionally we would support Windows Active Directory, okay, but that's that's pretty basic. So what we've done is we've opened up Latitude to support single sign-on functionality. Using a technology called SAML 2.0, which allows you to configure an identity provider that your organization is using, and Latitude will consume the credentials that way and simplify that sign-in process, the login process, but also enable our customers to manage how they want to handle identities and authentications without.
Well, that opens a whole. Like, I feel like this is something that was super simple years ago, right? Everybody had a password, then everybody had a two-factor, and now we're getting to this whole new level of identity management, right? And I feel like this whole new industry has been born around being able to identify yourself to your own systems. So it's interesting to see you guys kind of taking that approach with it, right? Tying into those other identity tool sets and simplifying granular level of access that's required for individual users.
Sure. Again, our customer is not just the collections. It's the technology that organization uses, right? So,
Mhm.
the ability for us to integrate to their solution has become a critical function of the business, right?
Mhm.
Not having to manage different logins and passwords across different applications. Obviously, in Latitude or in any system, there's policies and permissions that are relevant to that application, but entering it shouldn't necessarily require multiple steps of authentication to get there.
It always just takes us a little bit more time, which, kind of, I want to go back to the digital communications for a minute, because I know we talked a little bit about the scheduling of communications and kind of the integration that you guys have with the Genesys, family of here.
Sure.
But one of the things that I feel like we didn't really talk about, but it ties very tightly into the digital communications, is the self-service portal that you've put together over or that you launched in 2023. Can you talk
Right.
a little bit about what it is that your objectives were and what it is that you guys rolled out this year?
Yeah, so from a self-service portal or capability,
Mhm.
um, obviously that's a lot of direction where a lot of businesses are wanting to go to, right? It's the ability to offer up self-service. Um, so we looked at that, and looked at what is the core functionality. It's not just necessarily a payment portal, which is what a lot of people conceive it to be. Self-service goes beyond just that, right? It's understanding, you know uh, information about that person, be it phones, emails, demographics, the ability to upload documentation or download documents beyond just the self-pay capability or the payment portal functionality.
Mhm.
So we looked at it from that standpoint, and basically this is going to sound a bit odd, but we consumed our own APIs to build a portal, right? We're doing that all within Latitude today.
Mhm.
Uh, so rather than having to look at building something new, it was really look at how do we leverage our own existing API set and be able to publish that in a consumer-facing, self-service manner, obviously with all of the security and control set around that, but the ability to publish that. So when we do that, we took it beyond just self-pay, but in the payment side, we also looked at it from the standpoint of why not allow all of the functionality that an agent may be able to consume when setting up a payment plan or taking a payment with a customer or a debtor, but push that out to the portal as well. So basically, all of that functionality that the agent may have,
Mhm.
you can publish that on the portal as well. Now, everything is driven by policy of what do you want and how do you want it, right? So
Mhm.
you can control what's available at that at the portal. You can do that down to the individual client level. So if you're collecting for company A, you may have different rules than you have for B, and the portal observes all of that functionality as well. But what's also critical for any portal, in my opinion, is all of the actions and activities that take place there have to be fully documented on the account as well, right? So it's not just took a payment, but anything that I do, anything I change, anything I update gets audited and logged on the account, just as if it was an agent performing those actions. So from an audit and review perspective, you can go and find very simply when looking at an account all of the activity that took place on a portal versus activity that took place via an agent. So that's kind of the approach that we took to that.
That's interesting. I mean, I think from a payment, like, digital communications only really make sense if you're pushing to some sort of a portal that allows them to integrate. I love the idea of it being beyond a payment portal and enabling the consumers to actually, prepare. So I feel like there's being able to move the documentation, right? Be able to get account statements and all of these other things. Like, all of that to me is a major function of doing these digital communications, because if you're sending out text messages and emails to a consumer and you're not pushing them back to the most frictionless experience that you can, you're
Right.
losing a lot in that process. And even just looking at it through standard e-commerce lens, right? Like taking the collections hat off, putting on the web developer hat, and thinking about e-commerce, a lot of that functions the same way.
Sure.
Now, the way that you guys set up the portal system, and you were talking about the granular level rules that exist between both the clients and down to the client level, is that configuration done in the portal, or you configure, or is it ingesting what Latitude already knows about each customer?
Correct. So you're setting up those business rules and how you guidelines around the collections, right, for individual customers or situations, yes. And that has to be set in Latitude because the agent has to follow those same steps, same capabilities and boundaries. So anything that's done on the portal consumes all of the configuration that's done in Latitude itself. So you're not having to set it up and manage it in different places. Now, you can set limitations because you may want to restrict on the portal certain things happening. But you don't have to manage two environments, if you like. All of that functionality and controls and settings are done in Latitude. And then the portal just takes those and consumes them.
Okay. Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Mhm.
I guess my next question is kind of a little bit more down the lines of my favorite module in Latitude, which is the agency interface manager, the AIM platform, because that interaction between the creditor, the debt buyer, the agency, the law firm, right? Like that interaction between organizations or service providers or across the disciplines in the receivables management space definitely plays a part, in how we manage literally everything we do. So
Right.
talk to me a little bit about what you guys have been doing in AIM and what enhancements that particular module has seen.
Yeah, so we got accused of not doing things with AIM, but that's not true. We continue to evolve the product and so on. But one of the things that not necessarily in 23 that took place, but we enhanced AIM to support the Reg F7 and 7, right? All of that capability. But what we've also looked at for enhancements into AIM, things like work effort. So the ability for the account owner, be it a creditor or a debt buyer, to see all of the work effort that's taking place at the agency on those accounts. So, historically, that would be such things as just lettering, right, or phone calls. But we've now extended that to include all of the channels, be it, voice, be it printed, be it digital communications for email or SMS. So the ability to kind of ingest back so you can see what's actually happening at the agency on the accounts. So we've kind of improved AIM to support all of the different channels of communication, so better understanding there. But one of the things that we're actually working on right now, and hopefully come out here relatively shortly, is documentation, right? It's always been a challenge when placing accounts that there is information, be it documents that are attached to the account or associated with the account, that really need to go out to the agencies so that they can better understand or can communicate or provide documents to the debtor or customer in that collections process. So we're including the ability now in AIM to attach as a supplemental file to the placement any documentation that you want to pass over there as well, and configure the documentation types that you want to send and package those up and then route them with the placement. Historically, that's either been done by a manual process, which is highly inefficient, or you're now obviously getting communications requests for documentation coming back from the agencies that somebody has to then devote time and effort to get that document, package it, send it via an email or a file transfer or whatever. So the goal here is to better position the agency on day one in collections of here's the account, here's all the account data, and here's the documentation that you will need to be able to effectively work and collect on the account.
Well, I think that would have a positive effect from both angles, right? Because you're also reducing those that are making the placement, you're reducing the workload, right? Because you're getting up front, you're reducing the amount of communications that are required to do the same amount of work.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, traditionally, agency needs a document, they're calling or they're emailing or they're doing whatever, or request and response within AIM. But I can alleviate that, the bulk of that, right, by providing documents upfront of placement. There's always going to be updated docs or docs that weren't sent that would need to be handled. But the idea here is if I can get rid of 95% of the effort that it takes to get documents out to the agencies, that's a win, right?
I mean, that's a major lift, and generally requiring, depending on the size of the agency or the debt buyer, I mean, you could be talking about 3-4 people or more that are sitting in a room that are just, tasked with managing that process. I personally managed that process for many debt buyers. And it is a lift, right? I mean, you're talking about every different client has different naming conventions, and then you've got optical character recognition, which may or may not be playing a part, right? Like, there's just so many different pieces and parts that go into appropriate document management.
Right.
The only thing I never really solved, I think, in this industry was the affidavits, right? Because you don't require an affidavit on every account, so you still do have that little bit of a manual process. But I think if you can get the chain of title documents, the media documentation, application statements, whatever is available on that account over to the agency up front, you're also enabling them to respond to any disputes or any of the Dunning letter responses that you may receive. I mean, that really does start to make a difference for you.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, it's something we've looked at over time, and it's always, how do I do it? How do I package it? What do I need to do? And now, just to your point, you're going back to volumes and placement strategies going up, right? More accounts flowing in that direction. It becomes unmanageable, or it takes too much resource to accomplish that. So again, bulk plays still support individuals, right? We're going to look at extending that beyond, just the initial placement. If there's a media request that comes in, can I automate that if I have that document available within Latitude. So it's just kind of an evolution of how do I manage documentation back and forth. Again, the ability to take docs coming from the agencies and load those back into Latitude as well, if needed. So.
Well, I think the bidirectional communications are essential, right? Being able to push that, pull information in when the agency is contacting a consumer on your behalf, being able to understand what happened or any documents that were provided to that agency, keeping your account up to date is essential.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening today, but it's happening. A document has to get emailed to somebody who then has to save the attachment and has to attach it to the account. Again, it's a manual process. So, as we look at
Manual touches with opportunity for error, right? Like, this is sensitive information that is also named differently depending on the creditor that you're dealing with, right? Like, there's no standardization in the management of media.
Right, absolutely. To your point is, how do you genericize that and enable that automation?
Exactly. Well, as we start, I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about what the roadmap looks like for 2024, just to give the audience a glimpse as to kind of where we're going. But as we get ready to kind of talk about that last piece, if anybody has any questions, feel free to add those to the chat. I have that running on one of my screens, and we'll just continue to monitor that as I kind of go through these final questions with Ian. So, Ian, we're looking 2024, it feels like you guys have your eyes set on some specific features and functions. And although I'm sure the roadmap is not 100% for the entire year, what do you see kind of, what are some of your focal points for Q1 of 2024?
Q1 focal is some more enhancements around integrations, open platform, and so on, expanding the APIs. But a major push for us is more around the healthcare side, right? Latitude is historically, and a lot of systems are historically, guarantor focused, right? I'm collecting from guarantors, cash collections. One of our focuses for going into Q1 is really the ability to better manage healthcare collections from the standpoint of insurance follow-up, insurance work, the ability to work insurance companies in addition to guarantors if needed, the ability to look at how do I work a carrier, right? It's different. It's not an account-centric model, which is what the majority of collection systems are.
Mhm.
Account-centric. This becomes more carrier-centric. So, how do I work Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia for the best accounts that I'm trying to follow up on insurance payments for? So we've invested a fair amount of effort here in the plumbing behind the scenes on how do I how do I be able to manage and track that, right? But then also the agent perspective of it's a different UI. If I'm working a carrier, it is different to working an account. Yes,
Mhm.
so I need to know more about the carrier. I need to know the accounts I can discuss. I need to be able to look at those accounts, work those accounts. But again, it's also from the finance perspective, right? How do I know what I'm trying to recover from or collect from an insurance company? So it's a different balance set when you look at the financial aspects. How do I track and manage payments that may have come in from insurance, and so on? So again, that's kind of been a focus for us, is enabling more healthcare type collections capability, in addition to what we're doing with continuously just evolving the product to better support some of the compliance components that we have to deal with in the industry,
Mhm.
enhancements to digital, and so on.
Well, it sounds like you've got your time full coming up here. We do have a question on is the portal that Ian was referring to the web access tool, or is it another Latitude tool?
No, so web access is a product that's been around for quite a while here at Latitude, and it's really designed for the client or the credit grantor to access Latitude, to look at accounts, get some reports, and so on. The portal that we've been talking about is a separate solution that's actually part of the suite. It's not something separate. It's included with Latitude, and
Mhm.
that's really just a consumer facing portal. So completely different to the legacy web access.
Okay. So different purpose altogether, right? Like, so one is really consumer faced, and one is more faced for the clients that place accounts to look at reporting versus making a payment or updating information.
Correct. Correct. Um, again, I will tout the fact that we're open. We consume our own APIs for our portal,
Mhm.
and they are public APIs. So if you have your own consumer-facing portal, you
Mhm.
can integrate it with our APIs to access and update Latitude and observe those business rules that you want. So,
Sure, but I would like to think that the integration and authentication for individual consumers might be a little smoother, running off, coming from a Latitude environment to a Latitude environment, and knowing how much time and energy you put into those things personally.
but again, I mean, like, it is right, and we put a lot of time and effort into that, and the business capabilities and functionality that we wanted to support, and all of the audit and tracking and so on, that we offer. But again, we're open. If you
Oh,
want to consume that functionality through a different portal, you can do that.
I think that's again, an interesting approach to how that works. And let me ask you this: is there anything else that you'd like to tell the audience today about your upcoming roadmap in 2024? Any other features, functions, tools, thoughts,
Uh,
comments, questions?
Yeah, there's actually a lot going on behind the scenes. We look at different functionality as it relates to the business, but we as an organization have what we call tech debt, right? Which is
Mm.
things that we have to do from a technology standpoint. Um, you know, we invest a fair amount of time now in certification on different operating system versions and SQL versions, and all of that consumes resources on our side. Um, things, it's always been a challenge in Latitude based upon the licensing model of a license is associated with a particular database. Well, if you've got a development environment and a test and a production environment, you know I want to pool those licenses, and if I need to consume one in dev, I don't want to have to dedicate it to dev. I just want to use it when I need it, right? So things like that are taking place behind the scenes as well. Um, so again, push on healthcare, continued involvement of digital channels, the continued involvement of business process automation capabilities but then also paying off some of our tech debt, which at the end of the day still makes things uh, become beneficial for the end user, right? Because it reduces some of the challenges that you may face as a customer from a technology standpoint.
I always like to look at the tech debt as those things that we're doing to enhance the experience of the existing consumer, like of the existing users, versus other things that we may be wanting in the future. But as technology continues to evolve, keeping your platform up to date is a constant challenge, right? Like there's we were just talking about user access at a granular level. That's not like a new concept. It's just a new mode of transportation by which to achieve that concept.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to stay with the times, right? And times are changing. Times they
And fast, Ian, and fast.
Yeah, they are, and that becomes a bit of a challenge, obviously, from a software provider standpoint, but it is a major focus for us. So we are setting aside resources to be able to address that, um, as well as what we look at from just the traditional enhancements that you would look to see, as the business evolves, as the
Mhm.
world changes, and so on. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on and having this chat with me today. It feels like you guys are working on some really incredible tools, enhancements, and capabilities for your platform and for your customers. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing with me.
Oh, my pleasure. Always like to share what we're doing and how we're doing it. Again, there's a lot going on, and more than we can discuss in an hour. But just wanted to touch on some of the highlights there.
100%. I appreciate you giving me my hour and giving me the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing. I think it's been a lot of fun to watch this organization continue to evolve and stay on the cutting edge. So I definitely appreciate that time today. For those of you that are watching, if you have additional questions you'd like to ask Ian or myself, you can leave those in the comments on LinkedIn or YouTube, or you can leave additional topics you'd like to see us cover. And hopefully I can get Ian to come back at least one more time to help me continue to create great content for a great industry. But until next time, Ian, thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, my pleasure, Adam. Always a pleasure to talk with you about what we're doing and what's going on in the world today.
Much appreciated. And for everybody watching, we'll see you again soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.